Hi everyone, it's Steve Swinburne here, and I really love that question. Why did you become a writer of books? I think I can boil it down to three things. I love kids, I love nature, and I've always loved words. And this job of writing books for kids about nature and other things allows me to really express my love and passion for nature and the planet. I've kept journals for years, and I always encourage kids to do that. I started, if you can see those little guys right there, I started writing in journals when I was probably in third grade. I'd come home, go to bed, and pull the sheet over my head and pull out my pen and my little flashlight, and I'd write stuff in here. Not very good, but it progressed over time, and everything gets better with practice. So I kept journals. I became a naturalist in someone who loves nature in their teens. I got a job as a National Park Service ranger. I started to write nature columns. I started to write articles in magazines. And when my wife and I had our first child, Haley, back years ago, I didn't have any children's books, so we went out and bought some children's books. And one of the first books that I ever got was Jane Yolen's Owl Moon. And there was something about that book I just loved. It was this beautiful, lyrical celebration of a dad and a daughter going out on a moonlit night, hooting for owls, the great horned owls. And I love the combination of the words and the illustrations. Something clicked for me, and I said, wow, I've been writing for adults this whole time. Maybe I could turn my attention to writing for children. So once again, it was this love of words, the lyrical, beautiful sounding words, nature in all its magnificence, and children, and trying to make them aware of all the great stuff that this planet has and how important it is to save it. Probably the biggest one is coming up with a fresh idea, sparkling, brand new idea. My friend Laura Backus, who runs this wonderful organization to help writers called Children's Book Insider, she writes, kids absolutely deserve the best books possible. And I think kids absolutely deserve the best ideas possible. So the big challenge is to come up with a fresh idea and work on it. And sometimes there are a lot of ideas. So another challenge might be which idea to work on. Do I write about manatees? Do I write about tortoises? Do I write about blue whales? So as a writer of nature books, I'm always got a file going and deciding which idea to pursue. And sometimes I've got to find those stories within the idea. And of course, these always help. My little notebooks, writing down ideas, coming up with plans to pursue the research on that. And you talk about the joys of writing, finding your story. That's finding the way into your story, finding a way to make your story accessible to children and to readers and have them hook into that story. I'm always telling kids when I visit schools, three things that can really help your writing: hook the reader, strong verbs, and cool details. If you can get those three things into your story and make that part of bringing that story to life, it's so important. So for me, a great joy is digging into the research. And from that research, whether it's again about blue whales or manatees or sea turtles, it's finding the story, the beginning, the middle, and an end. And it's all about paying attention, taking notes, being observant, having the ears open, the eyes on, and listening, and finding the story and bringing that story to life is such a joy. Why did I choose to write about sea turtles? I think it must have started when I took a job in the National Park Service in Cumberland Island National Seashore, this beautiful stretch of outstanding beach. It's the southernmost sea island in Georgia, and it's a national park. I became a backcountry wilderness ranger, and my job was twofold: to monitor the backcountry of the park, to make sure if any tourists or campers needed help, I was there to guide them, but also to monitor the wildlife. And I'd often ride the beach or walk the beach and got very familiar with what was going on the beach. And I spent hours on that beautiful stretch, 17-mile stretch, and I'll always remember my first encounter with a wild sea turtle. It was early evening, and I was alone on the beach, and I knew the beach really well, and I saw something up ahead, and I saw some tracks. And I saw that a set of tracks, a single set of tracks, was coming out of the water going up to the high tide line. And I knew that if it was just one set of tracks, that the sea turtle should still be up at the high tide line, because it wasn't another set of tracks with the mother going back down to the ocean. So I knew that she was probably up there. So I crept very gently and quietly, and I stood beside her, behind her, and watched in awe as she laid her eggs and did her beautiful thing on that beach all by myself. And then I watched her for over an hour as she laid her 100 eggs, just about, covered them up with her hind flippers, and made a beautiful camouflage seam, moving the sand around, moving her body around in the body pit, and then turning around and slowly making her way back out of the ocean. So I watched the whole thing. I was so engaged and so overwhelmed by this that it stayed with me, and I couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake that beautiful memory, that experience. So a while later, I sat down and I wrote this book called Turtle Tide: The Ways of Sea Turtles, all about the loggerhead sea turtle coming up to lay their eggs on the sandy shore, and about the eggs hatching about 60 days later, coming up as a team, working their way out of the nest, and then dashing down, that very frenzied dash from the ocean, from the nest down to the ocean, getting down to the ocean, and how important that is. So from that very first experience as a National Park Service ranger, watching that wild turtle lay their eggs, and I wish every kid, everybody could see that amazing experience of a mother laying her eggs in the sand. That led to my lifelong love of sea turtles. It's been so cool to write about sea turtles. It's a blast, it's fun, it's a joy, it's a challenge, it's so neat. I've had the opportunity and the pure love and passion to write about sea turtles, and I've written 3 books. I just can't get over that. I've written 3 books about sea turtles. My first one was Turtle Tide: The Ways of Sea Turtles, and this was inspired by my very first introduction of sea turtles on that beautiful stretch of wild Cumberland Island National Seashore in Georgia, when I met my first wild loggerhead sea turtle female mother laying her eggs in the sand. This is all about that. This picture book with beautiful illustrations by Bruce Hiscock, published by Boyd's Mills Press. A few years later, I got an opportunity to go to St. Kitts, where I met and profiled Dr. Kimberly Stewart, who's working so hard to learn and save the endangered leatherback sea turtle, different from the loggerhead, a different species. And this is the oldest species, probably one of the most endangered sea turtle species on the planet. And this is in Houghton Mifflin's Scientist in the Field series. And it was so great to profile her and tell her story of her trying to change people's opinions about sea turtles in St. Kitts, and have them see the sea turtles as these wonderful part of the environment. That's Sea Turtle Scientist, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. And my most recent sea turtle book, which just came out with Lerner Publications, Millbrook Press, is called Run, Sea Turtle Run, A Hatchling's Journey, with beautiful photographs by Guillaume Foulet. And this is for younger readers, and this is all about the frenzied, crazy dash of those little hatchlings, the leatherback hatchlings, going from the nest site down to the ocean, and how they have to move and go quick and get down there. There are predators like seabirds, and there are crabs scuttling around. There's so many dangers that they encounter, but that was so fun to tell the story of those little hatchlings. So for me, trying to relate to readers about this sense of mystery, the sense of beauty, the sense of resilience, and the sense of vulnerability of sea turtles, and turning kids on to sea turtles and making them aware of how wonderful they are and how magical they are and how important they are to the ecosystem. By making them aware, we can make them care. And that's just something I continue to think about and work on. Okay, my advice for young writers. You're going to read. You're going to write. You're going to read a lot. You're going to write a lot. This is how it goes. You're going to keep a journal. Journals are so important. Put your feelings in there. Put the weather in there. Put stories that you've come up with. Put dialogue in there. Put really cool stuff that maybe you've heard. You're going to keep a journal. You're going to try to write every single day. Could only be 5 minutes. Could only be 2 minutes. But carve a little space out of time to put words down on paper. Carve a little time to do some reading. Read. Writing takes practice. If you want to be a good basketball player, you got to practice. Write all the time. Read all the time. Keep a journal. Keep everything you write. Don't throw stuff away. You never know when you might retweak that, re-engineer it, and move it around, and it may be something you could use in the future. So never throw anything away. I challenge you to read out widely. Okay, you want to read some poetry, read some graphic novels, you want to read some horror stories, you want to read some longer nonfiction. So read widely and write. Challenge yourself to write in different genres. You've never written a poem? Write a poem. You've never written a story about a character? Try doing that. Be patient. You will improve. Practice. Write. Read your favorite authors and try to write like your favorite authors. Don't plagiarize. Don't copy. We never want to do that. But try to incorporate some of the stylings that you're beginning to read. That's how you grow as a writer. Don't forget to include these 3 wonderful things I always tell young writers to include in their writing. Active verbs that brings the writing to life. Active verbs, cool, interesting details, great details. And finally, hook the reader. You want to grab the reader with a fresh hook. Strong verbs, cool details, hook the reader into your story. Learn to take criticism. That's part of being a writer, part of being edited. Rejection is hard, but it's going to be part of your career, your growth as a writer. Some people will like your writing. Some people may not like a particular piece of your writing. Rejection is tough, but it's part of being a writer. Everyone needs an editor. I've written a little ditty on my ukulele. Let's see if I can pull this off. Here we go. My advice for young writers. You want to be a writer? Read. You want to be a writer? So you want to be a writer? Write. That's how you become a writer. You want to be a writer? Read. That's how you become a writer. You want to be a writer? Write. That's how you become a writer. Yeah. Read a lot, write a lot. Take care.